Liberty University. I've wanted to come here my whole life. This is my first time. Good to be with you. I'm Dr. Gina Loudon, and I serve on the President's Trump 2020 Media Advisory Board, which means that you have to suffer my face from time to time on cable news. And I believe that at least some of you are getting a copy of my brand new book, Mad Politics, that the president himself tweeted about twice, so I'm pretty proud of that. And I hope you enjoy it. Got some great panelists with me, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and we're going to talk about something that I think might be even more important to you in your future than it is on its face. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, my co-panelist, Autumn.
Hi, I'm Autumn Johnson. I am a social media editor at Blaze Media, and I'm also a law student at Liberty Law. It's my second year. Yeah.
And my name is Hannah Sherlocker. I'm actually a 2017 LU alumni. And I've worked with both of these ladies before, actually. Autumn and I worked together at Campus Reform for about a year, and then I worked with Gina. I'm the communications manager for Proactive Communication. We're the firm that handles the communications program for the Trump campaign. So I've had the pleasure of working with both of these ladies. So we kind of have different fields of experience on messaging and communicating a message to the public in a way that everyone can understand. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited that you all can make it out.
And I think we have one of the most amazing opportunities in really world history. For those of you who love using your words and love communicating in whatever form you find, I think that there's more power in that today than there probably ever has been in the history of the world. Consider that for a moment. So with that, I want to go first to Hannah and talk to her, because I think that we get excited to win arguments and to get our point across, but we're also excited, especially at Liberty University, right, to win hearts and minds. And those are sort of two different things. So Hannah, from your perspective, can you articulate for us which is which and what is your different approach in each between winning arguments, which is really important. We have to win the fight, right? But also winning hearts and minds, and how those two are different contextually.
Right, definitely. There's a very important distinction between the two, and in politics today, there of course is a time and place to win arguments, right? But when it comes to messaging and using your words to impact others, you really have to ask yourself before any message, whether it's writing something on social media or having a one-on-one conversation with a friend, ask yourself, what is my objective? Is my objective to own the libs, or is my objective to change hearts and minds? And if you want to change hearts and minds, I have found the most powerful tool is the art of question asking. Now, I know that sounds simple, right? Like asking questions, but that's not something that's really instinctual to us, We live in a generation where we want to get our thoughts out there. We want to be the loudest, wittiest person in the room or on social media. But if you take a step back to ask questions, you can get a whole lot further. See, when you ask someone a question, you disarm them. You lay your weapons down, and their natural response is to lay theirs down as well. So let's say I'm talking to a socialist embracing friend, and I ask them a question like, okay, what do you think about, do you think the DMV runs well? Well, what about veterans hospitals? Well, they're probably going to think back to a nightmare experience they had and imagine long lines and poor customer service. And they're thinking about their personal experience with it. And then you ask, well, probe a little more. Why is that? What are some things that do run well? They may say something like, Amazon. Amazon runs really well, or my private doctor's office, right? And before you know it, they're laying the foundation for making an argument for free market capitalism. But it was their idea. It was their words. They're the ones who got there. So when people think it's their own idea, they're so much more willing to listen. And by that same token, you also have to be willing to listen to understand, not listen to respond. We kind of have a natural tendency to formulate our own counter arguments when we're listening to somebody. That not only prevents us from missing out on key information, it it risks us losing our own credibility in the conversation. So really try to listen. I know Ben Shapiro always says facts don't care about your feelings, but feelings don't care about your facts. So if you're not empathizing with someone, if you're not really hearing them out, they're not going to listen to you. So,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a chapter on this exact topic in my book, Mad Politics, that I believe you're getting a copy of today. And I think it's really important that you figure out if you're about winning minds and hearts, which is a very different thing than what I do on TV. If I go on TV and I'm debating a socialist about the merits of socialism, my goal is not to win that person's heart. My goal is to win the audience's mind, which is a very different thing. But when you're one-on-one with somebody and you're trying to connect with them, I always say, find one thing you have in common. Maybe you like animals. Maybe you have a soft spot for, I don't know, some touchy-feely something that maybe isn't all based in fact. And if you find that that person is very emotional, connect with them on that. But like I said, there is a chapter on that in my book. But I want to move to Autumn because Autumn is a social media warrior. And she's very humble, so she's not going to tell you that herself, so I have to tell you. But, you know, Autumn, the thing about it is today, while we're all kind of learning our way through this, war that has become the battleground, really, of words, how do you advise, especially people starting off maybe in social media with really strong opinions and a lot of emotion, when they're putting themselves out there on social media? Because the one thing we do know about words is they last. And we also know that the Lord knows that they are going to use one wrong word you say against you. It will happen. If you contend and you're in the arena, I guarantee you it will happen. But Autumn, how can they best avoid getting themselves into some sort of trap that they can't get out of for words that they didn't mean that might be used against them later?
Well, I would just say, first to just watch what you say. I feel like a lot of times, like Hannah said earlier, we're so focused on, owning the libs and trying to make a point that we unnecessarily risk our reputation. And your reputation is the hardest thing to gain, and it's the easiest thing to lose. And we learned that at Liberty Law. They drill that into us, and it's so important because, you never know who's going to see, what you tweet. I'm on Twitter. Nikki Haley recently followed me on Twitter, and I was like, oh, now Nikki Haley sees my stuff. So you really have to sort of, first of all, watch what you say. I always say, people won't remember, what your GPA was. They won't remember what sort of car you drove. They'll remember how you treated them. And so I just think that's important to just really start off with. And if you do get yourself into a position where you've said something you shouldn't have, apologize. Say, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Don't be so caught up in winning that you lose your humanity in admitting, hey, I'm a human too. And just, remember as Christians, the most important thing I feel like when engaging with people is remember that your enemies are made in the image of God. And these are real people. These are people that are going to remember how you treated them, and they're going to remember, the way that you spoke. And if you don't have that, if you don't have your reputation, then you really don't have anything.
No, I think that's a great point. And also remember, yeah, she's good, isn't she? Also remember that, what they say about you, if it's not true, it really doesn't matter. Because I love the quote that says, it doesn't matter what your enemies said about you. It matters. What matters is your friends who were silent. So having each other's backs, being out there for each other, I think is really critical. But I love too the whole taste your words before you spit them out idea that Autumn gave us, because you really do have to, because things are going to be remembered. So I a lot of times will have someone proofread something before I post it, just my husband or a friend of mine who's close by, or even sometimes my children. And my children still to this day, before they post something, sometimes will say, hey, Mama, can you look this over? So it's not a bad idea to have somebody look at things you post if you have somebody handy. And many times I've caught at least a spelling error or a little, something that was written wrong. But Hannah, for you, how do you best protect yourself and those that you work with in communications from having things that they say used against them or against their ultimate goal? I mean, right now, a lot of what you and I do, and a lot of what all of us do, is defend our president, because he is portrayed so unfairly in the media. And so we don't want anything that we do to ever be used against him. How do you best prevent that?
Right. Well, I think when it comes to any communication, especially when you're put on the spot, you don't necessarily have to be an expert on every topic, and you don't have to have a hot take on every issue or know the facts about every issue. But if you can defend your principles, you can win any argument. You can respond to anything, and that's where we have an advantage over the left, right? They're at the whim of whatever's current that day. What's popular in the leftist circles that day. We have our principles. So if we can constantly go back to those and be firm in them, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to defend the person. You can defend the principle behind it.
And Autumn, when we talk about people engaging with their words, what do you find the best format, the most effective? Like, just talk for a minute to us about, your chosen medium of communication.
Well, I'm a Twitter person. I love Twitter. And, obviously you can use Facebook, Instagram. Instagram TV is becoming really popular now. But use hashtags.
Use hashtags. So true.
Use hashtags. Yeah. Tag people. If you're in a picture with someone who you think is important, tag them. If you think that you have an opinion on an issue that is being talked about right now, don't be afraid to voice it. You might think, oh, well, I don't have anything interesting to say about that. You're your biggest critic, and you're your biggest worst enemy. And so if you think you have something to add to the discussion, add it. The only person who's going to come against you for being honest and being genuine and just dealing with something in the right way is yourself.
Right, and just to kind of add to that, so I'm sure you guys know what I mean when I say as Christians, especially as a Christian young person, I think we kind of have a tendency to turn the other cheek when we're attacked for our political views, right? We don't want to, we want to go high when they go low, and we want to take the high road and the moral high ground, and we don't really want to engage in that back and forth. But I think it's important to recognize that turning the other cheek does not imply pacifism, nor does it mean sitting back silently while the left bullies an entire group of students into silence. And that's really what they're doing. So to be able to understand how to use our words in a constructive way and speak in truth and love is so important. That comes with a combination of truth, with empathy, with what I was talking about earlier, with asking questions to get people to understand, because our generation is unique in that we are targeted more than ever right now. So the left sees older generations as a lost cause, right? But they think they have a monopoly on the minds of young people. And you guys, as Christian students, especially as Christian students who go to Liberty, you are the exception, right? You escaped the indoctrination that has plagued the rest of your generation, right? You refuse to drink the Kool-Aid of the left. So you guys are the target. And if you see in the mainstream, Christian students are attacked now more than ever in this country. Look at New York Times. They recently just did this big expose on exposing Christian schools. When I worked at Campus Reform, I would expose courses that were being taught, mandatory courses, on things like how to queer the Bible, how to check your Christian privilege, how to expose white Christian males. There's a very deep anti-Christian sentiment that plagues the rest of your generation, and that's made to make young people feel like their views are so intolerable and bigoted that they're afraid to speak about them on a public platform. That's why it's so important that our generation realizes that we have a unique platform that older generations don't have. As conservative young people, as conservative Christian young people, we are the counterculture, all right? We go against the status quo. So people are interested in what we have to say, and we're held to a higher standard, and people are going to listen to what we say because we are different in that sense. So it's really important that we think very carefully about anything that we tweet. Everything you put on social media is permanent. Anything that you say is a reflection of what Christianity is, because many students, they go their entire 4 years on secular campuses never hearing a single conservative idea. So once you leave here and you interact with other peers in your generation, you may be the only conversation, a conversation with you may be the only one they have that exposes them to the ideas and the values that we believe in.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I know you and I both, when the journalist who wrote that exposed Christian school, we both commented and said, hey, we're 2017 graduates from Liberty University. If you want to contact us, we'll tell you. Never heard a word. And, that's true. They don't want to hear from us. They don't want to hear what we have to say because they're scared of it and because they know it's true. And I mean, like Hannah said, you could be the first encounter that a person has with conservative ideals, but you could also be the first person that introduces a person to Jesus. And so that's important. You know, when you tweet, when you Facebook, when you whatever, you could be that person's first glimpse at Jesus Christ. And if you don't conduct yourself in that way, you could cause them to have a false image of who God is and God's character. So that I would encourage that to be your first motivation. Ask first, you know, am I acting in a way that honors God? Am I acting in a way that would bring glory to his kingdom? And then second, is this in line with my ideas, my principles? And I would just go from there.
You know, one of the things that I wrote in my book, Mad Politics, that you're going to get, is I talked about how today in our clickbait media society, does everyone know what I mean when I say clickbait media? You know, we used to have, back in the old days when I was growing up, we had basically 3 major television networks, and that was it. You had 3 channels on your television, if you can imagine. You had maybe 1 major newspaper in every city. 0 social media, right? We had telephones that you had to dial. You know, so when you think back to the difference in communication, if you owned a newspaper or you owned a television station, you had an automatic audience. They had no choices, right? Or they had very limited choices. Now, with the advent of social media and all the blogs, and really to where, and I was part of this movement because I was part of the founding members of the Tea Party, because of the advent of technology and social media simultaneously, we're all citizen journalists now. We all are theoretically competing with these people that thought they had a monopoly and should always have a monopoly on all things media. They don't want your opinion out there. But the problem is they had millions and millions and millions of viewers tune in every night or read their newspaper, and you're taking that away from them as you're posting on your blog or doing your podcast or participating in your social media forum, right? So what do? They have to write the most salacious headlines they can possibly write. So to have a story and to win an argument, everybody knows who's ever had anything to do with script writing, you have to have an enemy. And at this point in time, they have made us, and really the president, to get to us. The president's not really their target, by the way. You know that, right? You are. President's not their target, you are. Because they know that you are their competition. You are going to keep them honest, and you are going to take away their audience. So they write crazier and crazier and crazier headlines that divide us more and more. But the point that I make in my book, and the point that I want to resonate with you today, and a good place, I believe, to start with people who disagree with you, is to point out that we live in the best, wealthiest, healthiest, freest, safest place and time and moment in all of world history. We don't have to be so afraid. Our God has given us such a gracious thing in handing us this president who has handed us this economy, who has handed us this national security like we haven't known in decades. Don't forget, other generations went to war. And so I think when you start with that and you can plant some optimism, because God is good, right? And they can begin to see God in the good that they get to enjoy every day that they probably haven't stopped to realize, because Chicken Little tells them the sky is falling every day and they have to have a new Green Deal to fix it all, right? So I think if you start with good news, just like the Bible starts with good news, it's a good place to start when you're trying to talk to others about this. But I want to give each of you a chance also for final thoughts, because I want to wrap this and I want to kind of go back to our initial question of, so what do we do from here with our words, right? Hannah, you go first.
Yeah, I liked what you said at the end there about starting with something good, and I think along with that, starting with something good, starting with that empathy and that understanding, get down, look someone eye to eye, get on their level, use their words. The left's favorite words are compassion and caring. Tell them, I admire your care for the poor. I admire your desire for justice. Here's why I think capitalism is the best way to care for people, is the most compassionate thing we can do as a country. Use their words and help them understand. Vilifying your opponent as a bigot with all these terms that you see, it's the easy thing to do, but you're really not going to get anywhere with that. So I would just encourage you to really think carefully about everything you say, every encounter you have. Think about every conversation, every tweet, every Facebook status as an opportunity, okay? We have the facts on our side. You know, we have the Cadillac. We just need to be better salesmen. So I'll just leave you with that.
Thanks. And Autumn?
Well, one of the final things is, you know, we've been talking about the impact of social media. Just some advice before you tweet or post something. Imagine that that's the one and only thing that your future employer sees about you. They just get that post, they just get that tweet, they just get that picture. What sort of impact is that going to leave for you as an employee? And another thing is to just support these conservative organizations, these Campus Reform, Daily Wire, The Blaze, all of these organizations that are fighting. I mean, they really are. They're out there, you know, writing these articles, going into these places. Steven Crowder with Blaze Media just the other week went undercover in a Planned Parenthood facility. He sent a team undercover. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be supporting these organizations that bring us this news, because CNN has a monopoly on this. The Hill, MSNBC, they think that they have us. They think that they have Americans, and we need to get out there and spread the real news, the truth. And Campus Reform does a great job at that. And you guys are college students, so I would encourage you to apply for their campus correspondent program. That's how I got my start, and that's how Hannah and I met. But just don't be afraid to get out there and share your views, and remember that the only person who's going to be against you is yourself.
And have each other's backs, because you have a real treasure in being part of Liberty University, where you do have a crowd of people who are like-minded, who will fight with you and have your backs all the way. Thank you so much for letting us join you today. God bless you guys.